Good afternoon. My name is Edwin Patterson. Thanks for joining me today. The topic today is an earthquake that went off in the anti-world. It was called No Man Knows My History. There was so much acclaim, so much interest, so much waiting for this to be published. Here was a seminal document that was going to be a biography for Joseph Smith by a college professor who had background in English and in history. Someone educated, someone who would do a great job. But this book was going to show that the past anti-activity, which was Sidney Rigdon and the manuscript lost by Solomon Spaulding, that was not the answer. I have the answer. The woman's name, Fawn Brodie, and she became an overnight celebrity when she published her book, No Man Knows My History. Okay, so we have No Man Knows My History. This is the book, 450 pages, so it's not a small book. And you can kind of see the cover here. Fawn Brodie is the person. She is a cousin to David O. McKay. She teaches at the University of Utah, and she has a lot of thoughts about Joseph Smith. But the first thing she has to do is show Mormonism Unveiled was a foolish gamut. That wasn't really the way. And she has a whole appendix in here, Appendix B, if you want to look it up, to show how Sidney Rigdon never was the author. Manuscript lost was foolish thought to even bring it in. That's the old days. The new days are here, and it is Joseph Smith, and here's her philosophy, evolved into a prophet. There was never a God involved. There never was any spiritual. There was no angels. He became from almost nothing in Palmyra to a prophet known throughout the world. But he was false. And that would be the premise of her book. Okay, interesting. So, she focused on Joseph exclusively, so she's not looking at a lot of other people, that he was the author of the book, and that conjuncting with that, the Book of Mormon is obviously false because he created it. But how did he do that? So I could go on and on and on, and I'll just do one aside. There have been books written in retort to the No Man Knows My History. One is No Man, That's Not My History. And it's just, you think about an author or a biographer, you think there ought to be a reasonable amount of honesty in it. Now, so here's the book. Next to it, I'm going to hold up another experience. So this is a different biography of Joseph Smith, and this is by Richard Lyman Bushman. Bushman is also well known, a historian and a writer. Rough Stone Rolling, a lot of Mormons have heard of that, seen it. He calls it a cultural biography of Mormonism's founder. So it's kind of the same idea. But if you hold these up together and read them, you find a lot of truth in Bushman's. Miss Brodie stepped over the line many, 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 many times because she had to come up with a theory of how Joseph could have done this. She thought she had it. It's evolution. And so she's going to attack. Now in this video, I'm just going to finish up with a few quotes from this book. Just how she's thinking, how she's setting things up about Joseph. Then we'll have one more on her thoughts on the Book of Mormon. What this did, however, was changed all antis. Mormonism Unveiled was dropped. No more worry about that. What we're worried about today is Joseph's back, and he's a pretty smart guy, and he's the one who created all of this. So look at the evolution of the antis. Here comes Abner Cole and Alexander Campbell. Yes, Joseph's not very smart, and he did it. It's nothing. It's going to fade away because it's nothing. Oops, but it keeps on growing, growing, growing. Mormonism unveiled. Boom. New look, a new way to talk about things. Mormons keep growing. No Man Knows My History. Good, interesting book for a lot of people out there, but Mormonism keeps growing. When this was published, it had less than 1 million people in the church. Today we have 17 to 18 million. But this was the benchmark to move away from Sidney back to Joseph. So let me just read a few quotes to you. Okay. First one. Now, every quote I'm going to read, when you think of a biographer, you're going to see a lot of references. Where did I get this? And she doesn't have a lot of them. In fact, a lot of those have been looked at, and later on in life, after she died even, she's quoting from, or misquoting from different sources, or making up sources. Interesting. First quote here. The Mormon Church has exaggerated the ignorance of its prophet, since the more meager his learning, the more divine his book. Now that's a theme that she uses a lot. Now I'm a pretty well-read guy. I've never seen anyone in the church say, oh, Joseph Smith was ignorant. Or if they do, they're wrong. He's a smart guy, he just didn't have a lot of education. But she's making a big deal that the Mormons are saying that. But I see from Alexander Campbell and Abner Cole, they say it all the time. It came from the Antis, not from the Mormons. So, interesting first thought. Okay, next quote. At an early age, he had a talent for making men see visions. No asterisk, because it fit her narrative. Her narrative is he's evolving into a prophet. There's no, again, no asterisk on any of these quotes I'm going to read. Interesting, strange. Let's try another one. Joseph had more than second sight, which is commonplace among professional magicians. What does that even mean? She has a place she's going. He's evolving. He's changing. Interesting to me. Silly, but interesting. Here's the next. His natural talent as a leader included, first of all, an intuitive understanding of his followers, which led them to believe he was generally clairvoyant. What power Joseph had, per Von Brody. He had the ability to manipulate people all over the place by his power, his influence, his magnetism. That's her theory, her line. Okay, one last one on Joseph. Now in this is a paragraph, and there's 7 places in this paragraph that there's no reference, but it's, I would have to say, I don't know that. I haven't read this anywhere else, so it's interesting she would pull it up. She's talking about Oliver Cowdery and his first contact with Joseph. Oliver Cowdery had been attracted by a warm friendliness from the Smith family. The actual reality was they were suspicious of Cowdery because he was an outsider coming into their home. He stayed there because he was a teacher at the school in Palmyra. So they started out pretty cold. They warmed up to him later on. But she says, warm friendliness. And Lucy's richly dramatic stories, I don't know how richly dramatic they were, about the Golden Bible had already made him a convert. That isn't really how it worked either. He prayed, he had a dream, he was the person that's supposed to go down and help Joseph. So again, she's just kind of going over things. The school teacher, Cowdery, was a gentle, humorless youth. I'd never read that about him. Don't know if that's really true or not. Interesting you should say that. Having little education. Okay, interesting. But possessing a certain talent for writing when he was 22 years old, which is how old he was when he met with Joseph Smith. Okay? He was carried away with Joseph's engaging confidence and the stupendous implications of his gold record that he began to take dictation at once. So, what I'm trying to show here, and again, there are so many examples. She's throwing out things with no references. She's making up a story that follows her narrative. And in reality, when you really examine it, and I've read this sweet book 2 times, it's almost silly at this point in time. This was written 80 years ago, and just, man, if people bought that, they were looking for something, because there are a lot of things that are incongruous inside that book. Okay, we'll come back again and go over how she looks at the Book of Mormon and what she thinks of it. I've got a quote in there you won't believe. See you then. Thank you so much.